Welcome to Her Vision, Her Voice, a show where we celebrate the bold and powerful voices of women who are redefining the music and film industries. I'm your host, Aline Kazarian, and in each episode we dive into conversations with trailblazers who have turned obstacles into opportunities, using their vision to amplify their voices and inspire change. Now, before we get into today's show and what's going to be happening today, I want to take a moment to acknowledge that we are currently in the middle of the Dublab membership drive. Independent radio like this only exists because of the community that believes in it. Dublab has always been a space for discovery, creativity, and genuine connection. A place where artists, DJs, filmmakers, and listeners can come together without algorithms shaping the experience. So if this show or Dublab as a whole has ever introduced you to a new artist, inspired you creatively, or simply kept you company, consider becoming a member and helping keep this platform alive and independent. Make sure to go to dublab.com, check out all the different ways that you can become a member, either at $5 a month, $15, $25. You can see all the different perks that you would get. And yeah, consider becoming a member. All right, so let's get back into what's happening today. I will be joined by director and editor Kat Weber in the second hour of the show. Kat Weber is a Canadian director and editor working across music videos, film, television, and commercial work, with a focus on amplifying the female gaze through emotionally grounded, visually immersive storytelling. As an editor, she has shaped work for artists including SZA, Coldplay, Drake, Chloë, and Kendrick Lamar, and was part of the team behind 2 JUNO Award-winning music videos, including Kendrick Lamar's Luther, directed by Karina Evans. Her film and television credits include editing Emma Higgins' South by Southwest 2025 debut feature Sweetness, additional editing on Stars' P-Valley, and lead editing on Robyn Hood. As a director, Kat has worked with artists like Ciara, G-Eazy, and Kiana Lede, and has been recognized by Complex as one of Canada's top 10 music video directors. Across her work, she is known for building kinetic, dreamlike visual worlds that balance emotional honesty with a strong cinematic point of view. If you are just tuning in, this is Her Vision, Her Voice. I'm your host, Aline Kazarian, and I am very excited to announce that Kat Weber is joining me in the studio. Kat, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being on air. I know we were just talking off air about your stepmom who had reached out. So let's say hello to Candace, who had reached out, and she had said that she was going to be tuning in. Thank you so much, Candace, for tuning in.
Hi, Candace. Love
Literally
you.
The sweetest thing. I'd never gotten a message from a parent before, and it was just super sweet to receive.
That is hilarious, and I love it. And she definitely will be listening. So hello, Candace, and my dad. Like I was telling you before, they met and started in radio. So it's a fun full circle moment.
Yeah. Well, take me back to the very beginning for you. Talk about the importance of images and storytelling, even before you knew that becoming a director and an editor was something that could be a reality.
Totally. I mean, as a very young child, or since being a very young child, I've always been a sensitive girl, big feelings, and very interested in symbols and images and meaning making. For as long as I can remember, I've had incredibly vivid dreams. And when I was around 12, I started to very seriously study astrology and tarot and philosophy.
What's your sign?
I am a Pisces sun, Virgo rising, Scorpio moon.
I love that you know the big three.
Of course I know the big
awesome.
three. I know the big three and the little however many underneath.
The whole natal chart.
I love to do a reading for a friend.
Yeah.
I love to do a reading for a project. I love to do a reading for a character.
For a project?
Oh yeah.
Really?
Tarot's a big part of my edit suite life.
Really?
It is.
Okay, that's fascinating. We need to get into that at some point in the conversation.
But yeah, just to sum it up, I mean, I've always been super interested in how we as humans are in this like mercurial compulsion to label and name and meaning make and tell stories. And I was, fascinated by the fact that first thing we did was look up at the stars and their patterns and make up stories about them. And that tied to the hero's journey. And yeah, so I just became obsessed with that very early on, and it's informed, my process ever since.
Well, again, speaking of process, the fact that you brought up tarot and readings and all this. So how do you, essentially, when you know that you're going to be working on a project, do you just like bust out the cards and just like do a whole reading? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's different depending on who I'm working with and their kind of openness to that process, whether it's public or private. But I like to start, I had a lot of kind of perfectionism paralyzation early on in my creative process, where the empty timeline or the blank page would be terrifying. And I found that building a little ritual around starting and creating momentum was like a really, really helpful thing in getting past that. And so lighting a candle, pulling 3 cards to kind of inform some kind of starting place, energy, inspiration to kind of welcome this hero's journey into the process, and to get past that initial, how do I start, and contain it in a ritual kind of was my way through, whether it's editing, writing, directing, anything that you might feel fear with.
That's so fascinating. So when you started in the industry initially, did you have what was your definition of what a director, editor could be, and how do you think that that's changed over the years as you've continued to gain more and more experience?
Well, I didn't enter the industry from the traditional film school path. And so it always has been very intuitive for me versus technical, at least at the beginning. I started in acting school, in theater, in plays. And so I've always had this kind of collaborative, playful, truth-seeking intention with creating, and directing and editing. It was like this 4 a.m. love affair where I was like, oh, wow, we can capture this, and it doesn't just live one night only with one audience, and it can live forever, and we can do it as a team with a bunch of people. And so I started just making stuff for my friends' bands at school and taught myself how to cut, and it was very like trial and error, and it was almost like a hobby, I guess. Like, it was just fun. I didn't really see it as this kind of like serious career path. And so I guess that's kind of the thing that's changed the most.
Yeah.
Is I still approach it with a lot of play, but over the years I was like, okay, yeah, there's a reason that we need to be very technically sound, and there's a study that I have to do that I need to take on myself because I didn't go to film school, and I am coming from this more intuitive place. And so taking a lot of responsibility for getting serious about the business while maintaining that sense of play, I think, is what changed.
Yeah. Do you think it's affected, because it seems like you still approach your work with a level of playfulness, but it also, from the way that you described it, makes me think that you had a certain level of freedom maybe in the very early stages of making your work because you were so intuitively driven rather than so technically driven. But I guess also, in a way, you do end up finding a balance between those two sorts of ways of being and thinking. But do you think it's changed the way that you approach your work in terms of the type of freedom that you have?
I think that I'm constantly chasing that initial naivete and that almost like delusional self-confidence and unjaded kind of making it for the sake of making it, with no attachment to product or expectation on how it's going to go. Like, I think that is, where the truth lives, and I'm constantly trying to find that again, and do at times. I think it's almost like a flow state when you get there, where it's really about that purity of creation. And yeah, I think I'm constantly just trying to find my way back there.
How would you describe delusional self-confidence in your own words?
I think that it just comes like I've always been a dreamer, and I never was necessarily attached to any idea of where this could go, or what it could look like. But there was this kind of like, I can do it. I can figure it out. We've got this, you know, that now looking back sometimes feels a little bit delusional, knowing what I know now.
Yeah. But isn't that also great in a lot of ways too? Because it carried you through moments in your life that maybe felt uncertain at times, but you still kept at it, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'll always keep at it.
Yeah.
It's impossible for me to not, you know, and I think that in this industry, you know, we can feel a lot of, there's constant self-doubt, and there's constant imposter syndrome and unworthiness, and you know, restraint and restriction, and feeling, you know, as you continue, like budgets and this and all of the talk about the industry is not the way it was in the golden days and blah 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 blah. There's all of this kind of like chatter around you that is super negative and can be very overwhelming. And yeah, I think just going back to that kind of delusional dream-like place where it's like, I just want to make this with my friends because it's fun and I believe in it and this is what I think is cool and I want to see. Just going back to that and kind of letting the chatter of the industry is failing and this and that kind of fall away, because it's always changing. And we're here now, you know? It's not the 90s when budgets were this or that. And that's what I heard about coming up as an assistant and blah, 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 blah. And it's not, you know, the studio system and there was this and now oversaturated, over content, like low attention span, blah, 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 blah. It's like we're here. We're artists of the here and now. Like, let's create from this place.
Absolutely. Did you feel like when you were growing up watching movies, did you feel like there were certain directors that you inherently connected with based on the kind of themes that they were exploring, the work that they were making? Who did you feel most connected to?
Oh, man. There's so many. I'd have to, of course, say Sofia.
Of course.
Of course. I feel like she just spoke to me on a level that now I understand to be the term the female gaze. Mm-hmm. I think that she is the reason that I could internalize that concept, which is such a nuanced and big concept. But like virgin suicides, life-changing. And so, yeah. And then in so many ways in short form, I mean, Floria Sigismondi to this day is someone that I just revere. I just think that she is so brilliant and cool and singular and comes at the art form from such fun and playful and dedicated, almost non-commercial for how commercial she can be, from that place, just like pure artistry.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to meet her?
I have.
She's an absolute joy.
She is amazing. I was an assistant to her editor, Michelle Zukar, who is my mentor. And so I once brought her a veggie tray.
Love it.
In an edit. And she was tall and fashion, honey, and just like
that's such a perfect that's such a perfect description of Floria. She really is just, there's something very intimidating is not the right word, because she's so warm and welcoming.
Yes.
But there is this kind of like, I really don't know how to describe it. She's just so singular, as you said.
Yeah, so singular, has such a presence.
Yeah.
Almost ethereal.
It. Yeah,
like
that's
she's
it.
Graceful and, you know, just like speaks to my Scorpio moon so much.
I'm also a Cancer moon, so I totally understand the level of depth that you can go into.
Yes. All the feely tentacles, all the emotions, all the moon.
Oh my God, I know.
The moon signs, the moods. We love it.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about a specific moment in your career where you may have realized that your voice or your taste actually had weight in the rooms that you were stepping into. Have you had a moment like that?
I was super lucky that that moment came pretty early on for me. And it was when I was a assistant at a post house and kind of a junior editor, having my first clients for the first time collaborating with directors. And I had a couple directors independently say something along the lines of, I'm so happy that you're not a button pusher. I'm so happy that you're not like a yes man. I'm so happy that you have an opinion. Very early in my career. And I remember hearing that 2 or 3 times from different directors. And I just went, okay, like I have this permission to have an opinion. I have permission to fight for a cut without it being disrespectful, with them actually appreciating that kind of level of, you know, artistic tension in a way. And I think a lot about tension all the time. I mean, I'm a storyteller.
You're an editor.
I'm an editor. I love tension. And I think a lot about, you know, kind of like when you strike a match and the friction that needs to happen in order for a spark to be lit. And I think that, you know, I'm a Canadian, so we can be very polite and very trying to avoid conflict at all costs. But I think there is an inherent amount of friction that is required on a respectful level in order to create art. And so I was very lucky that very early in my career, I was encouraged to have an opinion and that my voice mattered. Yeah. And I feel very lucky that and grateful that they gave me that permission early on.
Yeah. Did these individuals also become mentor figures for you, or did you have people around you who kind of in a similar way, you know, were saying things like that to you, but were also like they saw something in you and wanted to help in some way as a mentor?
I think that I have been very lucky to have a number of mentors, but more important than mentors, I have had colleagues, people who I have been in creative relationship with for over a decade, who we've grown together, who we have walked kind of the path together, met the dragons, you know, and the trolls under the bridge, and whatever little fairy tales we want to talk about in terms of what we come up against in this industry. But we've done it together, and with a very honest and collaborative, and also like a calling in a lot of times. And I think that as much as I've learned from people I've assisted or mentors, I've learned more from colleagues that just in the process of making it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've worked on an incredible amount of projects with, you know, various kinds of major artists and brands. And I'm wondering if there was a project that may have quietly shifted you as a creative, even if you didn't realize it at the time.
I think we could do an entire segment on this, and it's
Really?
almost every project I can map how it's affected me, changed me, taught me something. I just feel so close to so many of the experiences. But one that really stands out to me is Coldplay's Everyday Life, directed by the amazing, brilliant visionary Karina Evans. And for this project, it was myself, Karina, our DP and producer, who flew from Los Angeles to Cape Town, South Africa, to Marrakesh, Morocco, to Kiev, Ukraine, and back at the end of 2019, before everything shut down,
Yeah.
and, you know, did this incredible world tour where the ethos of the song, Everyday Life, and the creation of the visual matched. And so we entered these incredible spaces and filmed real people, real situations, everyday life. And I have chills just thinking about the fact that I was invited to experience that as an editor, you know, to be on set on that journey. And in so many ways did it influence the edit, being there, hearing the sounds, the smells, the feeling, the, you know, it's a marker in my life that I can go to as kind of like faith, like a real feeling of this kind of like faith in humanity. And I watch it 3 times a year at least.
That's amazing. I love that it's 3 times a year, no more, no less.
Every quarter, baby.
Yeah. And that is, for an editor, to be on set, to be given the opportunity to travel and to be there in person and to witness what's happening. That is quite an uncommon thing, right?
It is very uncommon, and lucky for me, it is incredibly common.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky, especially working with Karina, that she has allowed me to be on set and you know, given me a voice on set. And in so many ways, I've learned so much from her. And that's also where I think about like your colleagues that are mentors, and she's, you know, younger than me, or you wouldn't necessarily put her in that traditional mentor box, which I love because she's absolutely a mentor to me. She's a colleague to me. She's become a best friend to me. And I'm incredibly lucky that she has seen the value of having an editor on set, whether from a technical perspective or from a feeling perspective. You know, all of it.
Do you think any aspect of that might also have to do with the fact that you are also a director?
I think that directing and editing for me is a feedback loop. And I think my closest collaborators see that as a bonus. And my biggest haters see it as something that they want to have me explain. Pick one. You know, what do you like better? You have to pick one lane or else you're a master of none.
Which I think is absolutely ridiculous.
Right?
Because
Can we get over this?
We should have gotten over it many years ago. I think the amount of people who I have seen who have been able to do multiple things very successfully has increased over the years.
Amazing. And I hope it continues too.
Yeah.
Because being multi-hyphenate, being cross-genre, when I was coming up, that was not cool. And it was also, you know, looked down upon. And I believe that those are like my magical powers. Like as an editor, I pull what I know as a director. As a director, of course I pull from what I know as an editor. As an editor who has directed, I'm sitting in a session with another director with so much empathy for wherever they are at in the process. And vice versa when I'm in the director's chair with my editor. You know, it's like, this is such a team sport, making movies, making visuals, making art. And the more that you can know about every process, every gear of the machine, the better you are going to be. Yeah. I think as a leader, as a storyteller, and as a person with empathy for what we do and how difficult it is. So I'm very lucky that, yeah, my best collaborators celebrate that side of me, and, you know, to the haters.
Yeah. If only there was a video for that that part of it. Let's talk about the relationship between editing and directing. Let's talk about the very different kinds of control and surrender that they both have inherently. How would you say you shift between those two roles mentally, emotionally? How do you go between being a director and an editor and just making sure that you're seeing things in a way that, I guess, paints the bigger picture, right?
Yeah, I think, like I said, I see them as a feedback loop to each other for me. But when I am editing, I'm in service to a story, to a vision. I see that as a place to be in service. I see it as the third and final script. You know, the script you write, the script you shoot, the script that you edit. I take that kind of very seriously in terms of like crafting story and arc and you know, mining for gold and really doing the job of an editor. And as a director, it's almost like the editing, I can deal with the trees, and then directing, it's the forest. And, you know, I need to hold a bigger vision. It's my voice. It's you know, what I'm here to say, and it's my taste, even though editing, there's like, you know, a portion of the taste is important there. But directing, I like to create an environment where everybody that I'm working with gets to be their best self and do the thing that they rock at.
Yeah.
And just like rock on. And I think that's fun. When I'm an editor, I get to like rock at that. And then when I'm a director, I get to like create space and create a container for everybody else to like rock at what they do.
Do you prefer to work on, when, like, let's say you have a directorial project, do you prefer to edit your own work, or do you prefer to have a different perspective?
I really prefer to have a different perspective.
Interesting.
Oftentimes I have had to edit my own work, whether it's like a budgetary thing, or a client has hired me as a director / editor. You know, cool, I'll do it. But I really prefer to work with other people, because whatever I can bring as an editor, I'm going to bring in the director's chair anyway. That perspective, it's just in me. But what that editor is going to bring, I will not have seen. They're going to do something that I didn't see. They're going to have a solution that I can't comprehend. There's a tunnel vision, I think, that can be a trap with directing and editing. And there are people who are amazing at it, and there are people who do it and it works great for them. And I'm very like non-prescriptive. I'm like, just because this is for me doesn't mean it's for you. Just because that's for you doesn't mean it's for me. It can all exist, but I love collaboration. I'm a collaborator at heart. I want to get in the sandbox with you. I want to make, you know, the castle. I want to like tear it down together. I love that aspect of this art form as a non-solo art form. And yeah, my favorite part of it is the play. So
yeah, letting go a certain aspect of, you know, that I don't know, the creative process, I guess, just being able to let go of that for a certain period of time and allowing somebody else to come in and interpret what it is that you are working towards, I think is a beautiful way to approach filmmaking in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's for the audience. Like, it's not for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not just making this thing for me. So the more other perspectives that I can include in it, the farther the reach. Yeah. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion. And, you know, there are directors out there that are like singular vision, singular control. And I'm not a classic. Like, I don't have any fire in my chart, let's just be honest. I'm a lot of water and a lot of earth, a little air.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I get it. I get it.
I love that we can have our own secret language.
No, totally.
Whoever's listening that understands this.
Totally. I absolutely adore astrology so much. I know a lot of people are like, oh, it's hokey and whatever, but I think there are levels of truth to it when you look at the bigger picture.
100%.
Not when you just say, like, I'm an Aquarius, for instance.
Love it.
So thank you.
You are such an Aquarius.
Thank you. So I'll say, like, I'm an Aquarius, and somebody might think of me in a certain way.
Yes.
Somebody might think of me as cold or like not emotional or whatever, but they don't know that I'm a Cancer moon, which makes me extremely emotional. But then I'm a Libra rising, so then I'm also like cool as a cucumber on the outside. I don't show my emotions in that sort of way, and so people might have a certain sort of, you know, idea of the type of individual that I am. But I think it's so silly, because I also found out that in my natal chart, I have 4 different planets in the sign of Capricorn.
We both have a Capricorn stellium, baby.
There you go.
I love that for us.
There you go.
And so many
of our
generation would have that too.
it's been a bit torturous on my end. But to your point, I think it's absolutely fascinating, and I find a lot of joy in it.
And I think that when you can look at it from more of a pattern recognition and archetypal perspective, and not a closed box, but as, you know, something that you can make meaning out of, that you can be in conversation about, and can be like, oh, when you say I'm an Aquarius and I say, oh, you're such an Aquarius, what does that mean? And how does that, and it's like, well, actually, no, I'm also all of these things. And it's like, that's what's so fun about it, I think, is that it gives you a flavor without having to define like everything, you know, and a secret language. I mean, I feel like we get to speak a secret language, which is fun.
Yeah. Well, I love it. Let's talk about the female gaze, which is very important to you and to your work. And you had mentioned Sofia Coppola's work as well at the beginning of the show. And I want to know what that means for you in practice when you are actually in the edit or on set. You know, you're making decisions frame by frame. What does the female gaze mean for you, and how does it play out in your work?
Another one where I feel like we could do an entire segment on, but there's a few things here. So for me, the female gaze is such a broad term, and when I try to distill it, I think that it's about allowing for female stories and protagonists to exist outside of the archetypes of maiden, mother, crone. And to have, yes, that can be a part of it, but that there's so much more complexity, nuance, interiority, and that they're not just an accessory to a male protagonist or to a plot line. I mean, we all know the Bechdel has like this has been a conversation forever. Actionable things that I do to support the female gaze as a director: hiring.
Yeah.
Hiring. I cannot tell you the amount of times that I've had a cast member, a crew, a client come up to me and say, this is my first time ever working with a female director, or this is my first time ever seeing a female DP on set, or this is my first time feeling like I'm on a set that is over 50% women, you know? And usually it's like this wonderful thing that they're sharing with me that's very happy, but for me, that's like, it's inherently sad as well. And we know the stats. We've seen the stats. We've seen how they've gotten even worse in the last few years after having a little bit of a spike. And, you know, so for me, the responsibility that I can take is, especially as a director in a leadership role, is hiring as many female key creatives as is possible. Not to the exclusion of men. I work with amazing men. But it's a lot easier to find men in this industry. There's more of them. You have to dig a little harder to find women. And, you know, coming up, I see it in the spaces that I'm in. And so that has been a pillar of what I do and how I can actionably take part in the female gaze. And then from a decision-making perspective, I mean, there's so much. And I just feel like when you put those decisions in the hands of femme-identifying people, then you don't need to do so much work to support the female gaze, because it's inherently there from the creators and from behind the camera.
Right. What do you think happened in terms of that spike that you talked about that has dipped? Because in my opinion, it felt like for a while there was this sort of, it almost felt like a trend. Like every company was talking about diversity and inclusion and all these things, right? And then all of a sudden, it just changed back to the way it was. Now, I could say it was partly political, which I do think it was. But do you think there was something else there?
I think that you nailed it in terms of how I look at it, as there was this trend, there was this kind of outcry with the Me Too movement. There was this like world-changing atmosphere with COVID and people just like being a lot more tuned in, I guess, to, or having more free time to look into these things, more visibility with it. I think that since then, I think like with anything, it's a pendulum swing. So it's going to like sway one way, sway another. There's pushback, there's the politics, which we can't ignore about what's changed between then and now in America. And yeah, I think that it's always been a boys' club. We like working with our friends. Like, I can't even say that that's a like, we do that, right? So there's a boys' club. They want to work with their friends. They have more access. It's always been traditionally primarily their form. I mean, we could go into history of like women weren't even allowed to work or have their own credit card or,
Right.
you know, have their own money to, this is an expensive thing to do, to make something.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think that that's why I'm kind of like unapologetically girls club.
Yeah.
And like, not to the exclusion, I'm not trying, but we all have a torch that we can carry, you know, and whether your torch is on, you know, this lane, mine is in the female gaze, and I'm going to do everything that I can to do that. And as an editor, I get to be in service to other torches, you know, that I love to be in service to, people of color, queer stories, you know, so many amazing things that I can be in service to. And then when it's my torch to bear, it's the female gaze.
Absolutely. And I think that's really, it seems so simple, yet is seemingly so difficult to have people understand the simplicity of it.
Mm-hmm.
To just the point of, I'm going to hire more women on this project. I mean, it's as simple as that.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it is harder to find those people to get onto that project,
but they're out there.
But they're out there. And as long as you continue to carve that path, then the possibilities just become greater over time, right? And that's how you influence culture. That's how you start to shift the way that society thinks about things. Because we're all malleable. Mm-hmm. I think that's the thing that we've, as a society, gotten stuck in, is this belief that it's either us or them, and there's no other way about it in regards to anything. It just feels like very black and white. Mm-hmm. And there can't be, you know, grace at all. Like, people can't have any level of just being themselves, and also understanding that, again, we're all very malleable. We can change, our beliefs can change, our ways of thinking can change, how we see things can change. So
neuroplasticity.
Yeah. It's like literally biology.
It is. It is.
It's so simple.
You know, shout out to the men out there who also are supporting the female gaze.
Yeah.
Because they are hiring women and or supporting in service, you know, to women. And I think that, or mentoring, giving, you know, some access to women. So I totally agree with you that it's not an us versus them. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just not. It's just that I will do my part. You know?
Exactly. I want you to talk about a creative instinct that you may have had in the past that maybe was not the most popular in the room, but that you felt like you had to fight for. What did that experience teach you?
So there's a few of them, but I'll bring up a most recent one, which was on Kendrick Lamar featuring SZA's Luther, directed by the incredible Karina Evans, who I can't say enough because she's just such a special collaborator to me. But we were on set and Kendrick was sitting in the church pew, and it was kind of pre-playback, pre-roll, pre-action. And he was just sitting there chewing gum. And we're shooting on film with the amazing Adam Newport-Berra. And there was this lens flare that came in, and then the song started. And then, you know, this incredible artist who I'm the biggest fan of and can't believe I'm working with, and in the room, eyes to camera, down the barrel of the lens, and starts to perform. And it's just magic. And I look over at Karina. We're sitting at the monitor. We both look at each other at the same time. Like, did you see that? I saw that. Oh, wow. That, that moment where you're like, something just happened. That was really special. Then when we got the scans back and we're going through the footage, that moment happens again. And we both have that look where we're like, wow, that's really special. That shot was like over 8 seconds of just waiting for him to basically start the song. And we kept it and we held on it. And it, is maybe not what you would expect from a music video, that kind of pacing or restraint. And even in the process of working with, managers and teams and labels and this and that, it came up a couple times, like, do we, shouldn't we just like get into it? Or is it weird that chewing gum is this, that, it's weird. It's like, but it's tension.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wait. It makes you watch. And like the amazing thing about film is the light leak. And like when that happens and how it happened, it felt like this, like almost mystical thing that was just like, no, just let it play out. And Karina and I fought for that, and it made the final cut. And it wasn't like a crazy fight. It's not like, you know what I mean? But It was a conversation, and it was like, it's hard to stay in your, opinion sometimes when you're talking to a giant, like that person who is meticulous with their craft, who is such an amazing, like, giant of culture, Kendrick Lamar. And you have to, like, defend your choices. And then him being the amazing artist that he is, seeing that and like going with it and trusting, the artist that he's also collaborating with, and respecting these women who are like, no, like this is fire. Like,
so did he feel differently about those 8 seconds initially?
It's not that he was against it, and I don't like to get too into that kind of part of the process, but it was a question. Mm-hmm. It was should we just,
get right into it.
And like attention spans and this and that, and is chewing gum weird, and like normal like vulnerabilities of being the person that is on screen for a long time in silence, I think that there is like a mix of strategy, a mix of vulnerability, a mix of it feels different. Does that mean it's off? That kind of thing. But it was Taj is our EP and founder of Fella, and he describes, he's, worked with Karina and I since we started working together, and since we both started in this industry, knew us as interns, basically. And he describes this thing between me and Karina called a no-look pass, what he calls a no-look pass. And it's this kind of like almost telepathic connection, or like, electrical current. And we both had it on set. We both had it in the edit suite with that moment. And so like that feeling, that thing, that indescribable thing is something we fought for and got. And I think, is one of the coolest pieces of it, because restraint, I think, is such a powerful thing. And silence is such a powerful thing that we often don't get to play with in short form. There's not enough time for it, or, the attention spans, or the driving of the music. And I think that a mentor once told me, a good editor knows when to cut, a great editor knows when not to.
Absolutely.
So,
and I think to your point, I think there is plenty of time. I think we've just gotten to a place as a society where everything is in hyperspeed and everything is about the next thing, the next thing. There's no just sitting with the thing, either in front of us, around us, behind us, whatever. Like, we don't just sit in that feeling, in that moment. We just are so wired for what's next. So I think the fact that you and Karina, took that stance and were like, no, this is a magical moment and we cannot let go of that, is beautiful. And again, even going back to the female gaze and your point about hiring women, more women on set, it's that same sort of thing, right? It's like those little things and those little moments are what start to shift the way that people think about what they're seeing, about what they're experiencing. And I think it's a gorgeous video. So good on you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
God, that must have been an incredible experience.
It was the most incredible experience. Yeah. It was, Like, I'm such a fan. I've spent my own money many times seeing Kendrick in concert and at festivals. And, you know, I feel like he's one of those artists where different decades of your life you can tie to an album, right?
Yeah.
In a moment. And so to be able to craft at that level and to, you know, have to raise myself to like the bar of that kind of artist is just such a gift.
Yeah.
Such a gift.
Do you ever feel intimidated when working with people like Kendrick? Or is it a different kind of feeling?
You know what? I find the word intimidating to be a funny word. I've had a few people when they have like gotten to know me later were like, oh, I was intimidated when I met you. And
really?
Yeah. And I'm like, and I mean, I'm like 5'2", like
interesting. So they think of it in this sort of like something that has to do with power.
I don't even know. And I find the word like it's always tripped me up when people have said it. And it's like, I get what it means, but I think it's a silly kind of thing, you know? And do I geek? I geek. Yeah. You know, I'm like trying not to like giggle and like be like such a loser. Do I get intimidated? Maybe just because of that word, I have a hard time with that word in general. I definitely feel pressure. Mm-hmm. I definitely geek out. I definitely, you know, feel like amazed. I'm just like a girl from Calgary, Alberta, Canada, who is in a room with these giants, like I said, and whose opinion matters and who's a part of crafting it. And that feels really cool. But I think once you work with enough people, you kind of realize that they're just artists and people too. And, you know, while they've done amazing things, aren't incredibly talented, like they're kind of down to earth. And I would say that definitely of Kendrick Lamar, just had the most down to earth energy, had the most kind of like not surrounded by a crazy posse and not like, you know, surrounded by security in a very visible way, like just super there, present, down to earth. So I didn't feel intimidated because they carry themselves in a way that is not intimidating. And I think sometimes when we feel intimidated, it's maybe less about the person and more about like our own sense of self-worth or our own narrative that we're putting on people. And so, yeah, I mean, I also have like the comfort of being with a crew that I'm very comfortable with. And in those moments, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And I really appreciate that distinction that you've made between intimidation and maybe, you know, comparing it to pressure. Because I think at the core of it, intimidation really is a feeling of pressure in a way. And I wonder how you channel that pressure. Like when you've just met, you know, a hero, let's say, somebody who has been very influential to you. How do you channel that pressure into the work? Is it just like, I have blinders on and I'm going to be in, you know, this moment and I'm going to live this moment fully? Or is there a different way that you are able to channel that?
I welcome pressure. I love pressure. Like I said earlier, I feel like there's an amount of friction that is required for creation. I was a downhill ski racer growing up.
Wow.
So I have a little bit of like an extreme sport like relationship to pressure. And also I'm like a little ADHD. So oftentimes I am like actioned by pressure. If anybody has that out there, you know what I mean? And so I think that I really like the gravitational pull of pressure. I think that it grounds me in the moment. It allows me to be more present. It kind of like, you know, sucks me in. Yeah.
Love the sound effect. That was great. From your perspective, as an editor and director, what do you think feels missing in the kinds of stories being prioritized in film and in television right now?
Well, I hate to sound like a broken record, but female stories, female-led stories, female-written, female-created, female-shot, And I think that's been missing for a really long time. And we're at a turning point that, you know, as you and I have discussed, is a little bit of a pendulum swing and teeter-totter seesaw. But yeah, I just want to see more women in more key creative positions telling more nuanced stories about the female experience.
Yeah. I want all the tech bros out of those really major positions at major studios or just any sort of high-level individual out there, especially on the business end. Mm-hmm. I just want more creative people, and especially women and mm-hmm. women of color and queer people. Like when will that happen? Yeah.
I want, you know, and when I say women, I think that it also can be like a bit of a like gendered trigger. Mm-hmm. And I totally like respect that. And I've actually had a lot of time where I've been like, maybe the female gaze isn't like something that feels right because it's excluding some of those other voices, but I've like come down to it in like it's not a binary in this scientific binary. It's more like the binary that we would give to the meaning of the sun and the moon. Mm-hmm. That, you know, they both exist and are full and they're not tied to kind of just like one thing or one physical experience. You know, that I one of my favorite things about the tarot is looking at it from like a degendered place. Like the King of Cups is also me, you know, the like whether it's king or queen. And so I think that, like I said, this is the torch that I get to carry from this existence that I'm living in, and it doesn't take away from anyone else's torches. And I want it to include anyone who identifies with the moon, you know. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
At this point in your career, what do you feel like you're still trying to unlearn or let go of in your own process so you can keep evolving?
Perfectionism. Perfectionism as a almost like worth tied to being perfect or right. I think that it kills creative momentum. And I think that, you know, like I said, I grew up as an athlete and the difference in a race was 100th of a second. And it was very quantifiable. And I think that I went into the arts because I wanted something that was more subjective and there wasn't a winner or a loser. And then as I started to get more into the industry, I was like, oh, there are these like very almost ties to that old thing of like validation and trophies and rankings and views and quantifiable. And I think that kind of continually returning to releasing expectation, releasing product, returning to process, to that ritual just to start, to the invitation of the empty timeline, of the blank page, of, you know, all of those kind of things that might scare you, or you might feel like I need to have it all figured out. Like as a director, I need to have it all figured out before I start, or else like who's gonna believe in me, or how can I lead if I don't have it all figured out? And it's like, no, actually the figuring it out happens in the process. It happens in the collaboration. It happens in the leap of faith. And we go back to tarot and to the Fool, card 0. You take that leap of faith off the cliff into your journey. And then you're met with the Magician, card number 1, where you have all 4 suits, hand pointed to the cosmos, hand pointed to the earth, and creation can happen like that, you know? And it's going from that having nothing to having everything in one turn of a card that I really go back to. So yeah, perfectionism, put it to rest and allow yourself to be in the process.
To your point about how, especially as a director, it almost feels like you need to know everything before you can get started. You need to have this sort of very clear idea of how everything needs to be, is something that I've also very much thought of in my own career. But I've been reading this book called Burn It Down by Maureen Ryan, an exceptional film and television critic. I'm absolutely loving this book so much. And I cannot tell you how many times in that book I have come across, a scenario where she's talked about how somebody had no idea what the hell they were doing. And they're at the highest levels of the industry. No clue what they're doing. And it seems insane because, you would think, well, they've gotten there because they know what they're doing. But it's not that. More often than not, it is not that. And I think that gives us a certain level of freedom that we forget about at times, because there is that pressure of like, I need to, be as ready as I can be. But I think being ready is very different than, having everything set in stone, because nothing is ever set in stone. As you're on set, something goes awry, you got to figure it out, and it might change the whole trajectory of that project. So nobody knows shit.
I think that's life too.
It's a Wild West.
I remember when I was a kid and I would look at adults and be like, oh yeah, they like really have it all figured out. And then you become an adult and you're like, I have no freaking clue. I have no fucking clue.
Yeah, and you might have some serious, conversations with parents, and then you realize that they also have,
exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. And I think, it's exactly what you're saying. Preparation is important, but you need to have presence in order to come up against whatever you're going to get thrown at you.
Yeah.
And perfectionism is like the killer of creativity. Yeah.
If you could change one structural thing about how the industry develops and supports visual storytellers, what would you change first?
I think access is still something that I contemplate a lot. Pathways into this business, pathways to create more opportunities for women, pathways to mentorship. In Canada, we have a really cool grant system, but it still has been even depleted in the time that I've come up in the industry. There used to be this thing called Much Fact and Bravo Fact, which were grants for short films and music videos. And those disappeared. And like so many of the people that I came up with or that I admire got those programs at the beginning of their career and allowed them to kind of get that, head start. Or the thing about our industry that's really tough in short form, especially, and I'm sure in all form, is this idea that you have to have done the thing in order to be hired to do it. Not even have made a commercial in order to make a commercial, but have made a food commercial in order to make a food commercial, have made a sports commercial in order to make a sports commercial. Not even that, have done this exact brand in order to do it. And so there's this kind of like hard thing of, how do I get the reel to get the job? How do I get the job to get the reel? We've struggled with forever. And I think that, there's a lot of reasons why Nepo baby or, rich kid there's this stigma about the industry being a place for like rich white men who went to like Ivy League or this or that, right? And I think more points of access for voices that look different than that, supported by the government, supported by independent businesses, supported by people with money, billionaires.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing with it? You know what I mean?
Where are you going to take it with you? Like, or you're not going to take it with you?
You're not taking it with you, and there's starving people on this
right.
planet, and there's people who are houseless, and there's artists who need to make things. So not to put us all on that level, but you know what I mean? It's just, like, how do you create access, and how do we all take individual responsibility for, if you're a billionaire who loves to go to the movies, like,
fork it over.
Exactly. And if you're a government that cares about the culture that your country creates, I think one of the reasons that the French-Canadian film industry has such an incredible history, and like we have the Denis Villeneuves and the Xavier Dolans and the Jean-Marc Vallées, is because like they really care about their artists and giving their artists opportunities, and have this kind of like European model with that, as like art as a lasting cornerstone of who you are and humanity. And so yeah, I just encourage more of the people at the top to have that kind of view.
Yeah. Well, to close, I ask every guest this question. What kind of doors do you hope your work opens for the people coming after you?
I love this question, and I love all of your questions. They've all
Thank
been
you.
so thoughtful, and I've enjoyed this. And when you said last one, I was a little sad.
I wish we could go for another
because
hour.
I've just been super enjoying this, but I hope that my work opens the door to more multi-hyphenate cross-genre babes.
Yeah. Love it. Simple as that. Thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you
for being on. You're such a genuine and magical person. And I really wish we could have talked for another hour. I feel like it was just going.
I love
And like
it.
we could have talked about astrology and tarot for the rest of the hour.
Well, hopefully we'll have more conversations.
Absolutely.
You know,
Will you do a reading for me?
I would love to. You know what? I almost brought my tarot cards today, and
Really?
I was like, maybe that's a little weird on the first meeting.
Oh my God. I'm like the person that welcomes the weird.
Okay, I promise you next time.
Okay.
I promise you next time.
We'll get coffee. We'll talk about it.
Amazing.
Thank you so much, Kat.
Thank you.
All right. That does it for this month's episode of Her Vision, Her Voice. Thank you all so much for tuning in. I will be back for another episode on June 20th. If you want to know what music I played in the first hour of the show, make sure to check out the archived episode, which will be out early next week. Stay tuned for Beats of All Nations and more Dublab programming coming up next. I'm Aline Kazarian. Have a great weekend, everyone.